Thank you, counsel. The case is submitted. This court stands in recess. Well, let us begin with Chamber of Commerce against Health and Human Services. Today's oral arguments make clear to me that this government claims powers beyond any enumerated in Article 1. Because the Health Care Act commandeers the people, it cannot be squared with a constitution recognizing the people as sovereign. I will vote to strike the law in its entirety. Justice Tomasini?
I'm with the Chief.
Justice Samuels? I'll be voting with the Chief Justice. Justice Allman?
Well, Chief, might I suggest you're sacrificing flexibility to formalism? I'll be voting to uphold the law under the Commerce Clause, or any other clause if need be.
Justice Palmer?
Many things worse than formalism, Rick. Results seeking for one. I'll vote with the Chief.
Justice Sanchez?
I'll join Justice Allman.
Justice Saroff?
I'll be voting to uphold the Health Care Act.
Justice Johnson?
This law cannot be squared with the Constitution of Liberty. I'll vote with the Chief Justice.
Justice Furstein?
Gentlemen, today's case was won 26 years ago, when the responsibility for emergency room reimbursement for the less fortunate was stripped from private charities and given to the government. Who's going to reverse that now? I'll vote to uphold the healthcare law.
That's 5 opposed, 4 in favor. The Health Care Act is unconstitutional. I'll assign myself the writing of the opinion. Johnny, do you have a minute?
Hello, Chief. Sure I do. Come in. Sit down.
I should get back to my chambers. No, Quentin, stay, please. Gentlemen, I have to change my vote in the healthcare case.
Reverse your position? That law makes citizens the servant, government the master. How is that constitutional?
I can't take it. After the State of the Union and the editorial pages, they intend to destroy the court's credibility.
There's only one way to preserve the court. Follow the Constitution.
If you appease the progressives now, you'll only embolden them. But if you can just follow the Constitution, they'll come around. Every branch has a role to play. Hasn't one reporter already said this is a disaster for the Indigo administration?
How do you plan to do it, Chief? This is the first law outside the context of war where the government claims a power to command the civilians.
I was thinking of diffusing all of this turmoil by calling the insurance mandate a tax. A tax? How do you apportion a failure to buy insurance among the 50 states? What amount can be excised on zero activity? What kind of income tax results where no income is created? Please, don't trouble me with labels.
Labels? The categories of taxes the federal government can impose derive from 2 centuries of precedent.
When do you hope to make this decision, Tom? Within the week.
Chief, we've read your initial draft. It subordinates the people to the government in one stroke.
Nah, it doesn't go that far. The government has always been able to tax. It's a modest compromise. Under the Constitution, government has always needed people's consent to increase taxes. When tax rates rose too high for citizens to consent to raising them further, governments closed the gap by debasing the currency to steal purchasing power or borrowed from foreign nations. Governments have used the excise tax to drain the resources of political enemies like tobacco growers and swell the coffers of allies like teachers' unions. Through it all, the people were highly burdened but remained relatively autonomous. The founders were aware that the carrot of tax and spend can be insidious, but that tax and spend has its limits. Along the way, there were those who looked for any chance to replace the carrot with the stick, but they were always thwarted by the Constitution. Your opinion, however, would loosen the stricture of tax and spend and unleash the stick of dictates, really for the first time in our country's history. Your opinion will permit the government to swing that stick at the heads of American people, ordering them to act in specific ways. The only citizens able to escape the orders will be those wealthy enough to pay the tax, the level of which government economists will have already calculated to maximum effect. No, there's a third way we can appease the editorial pages and ratchet this back.
How?
I'll insist all tax laws originate in the House.
This law didn't originate in the House.
I'll insist each tax law must be passed through Congress.
We lost that battle with E-rate. Even if the mandates all go through Congress, what you'll soon find are hundreds of dictates log-rolled into omnibus budget bills. The people won't be able to unwind them, and with your new commitment to a vast new taxing power, this court won't be able to stop them in your lifetime. There's no way to distinguish such a sweeping opinion.
This court cannot strike a law passed in the political process. Tom, every law contrary to the Constitution was first passed in the political process. The Constitution was written to protect citizens from certain political processes.
You keep focusing on the political process as if politics were our role. It isn't. Even so, there's no political will for this law. It was passed against the will of the people at every turn. And if this mandate is a tax as you would have it, the political debate on this law's key provision was a fraud from start to finish. But if you want to focus on politics, remember, this unconstitutional law will have a momentum unlike any you've ever seen. The Indego administration will have 5 months between now and the election to hook history's most productive and proud nation on the narcotic of public assistance. They'll fund their political allies with grants, while their agency heads intimidate opponents to the sidelines.
Businessmen intimidated?
Chief, you're being intimidated and you have life tenure.
Tom, have you ever noticed those towns that end in burg? Miamisburg, Reynoldsburg, Fredericksburg? Do you recall how they got that name? Burg stands for bourge, the root word of bourgeoisie, the independent class, the middle class, the class of people most hated by the left. Before the bourgeoisie, there were only two classes, lord and serf. The bourgeoisie arose when cash-strapped lords let industrious serfs buy their way out of servitude. Your opinion will take America back to a land of two classes, a government lording over the people and an industrious people seeing an unrelenting series of taxes as their only escape from mandated servitude.
Quentin and I are both 78 years old now, and only two of an insufficient 4 votes on the court who understand there's no way to restrain a government just granted an unlimited taxing power. We foresee the effects of your draft opinion even if you don't. You're hoping you can square the circle just this once, to somehow preserve a government of limited powers and uphold this law. We are here to tell you it cannot be done. If you go through with this, the empty praise your opinion showers on limited government and a meaningful commerce clause will be made real only by a future crop of justices despite you. Or it will be washed away by a crop of a far different kind. Tom, we've come here to tell you, if you do this, you're on your own.
That takes us to home builders versus the EPA. Justice Patchouli has the opinion of the court.
The requirement that each person install solar panels on his home or pay a tax equal to the price of the installation is upheld today as a modest policy proportional to the crisis President Indego has identified in the global ecosystem. That a person who cannot pay the tax will have his home seized to pay it is but a reinstated principle of the common law. In handing down today's ruling, we note discordant language in a case issued several years ago. It isn't the dexterity of the opinion that we disagree with. Rather, it is the opinion's dexterity that we heartily embrace today. There is no question that the tax upheld in U.S. Chamber against HHS functions as a penalty, and any penalty already in place can easily be upheld under the Commerce Clause. Indeed, we make what is implicit explicit today. Any language in U.S. Chamber against HHS suggesting a limit on the government's power under the Commerce Clause is hereby overruled. As eminent columnists have been telling us from both sides of the political divide, America hasn't any lack of leaders. It has a lack of followers. Let that rubric be reversed with the court's opinion today.
That takes us to Olson versus United States. Justice Porter has the opinion of the court.
The requirement that each person perform 10 hours community service per month or pay a tax equal to 25% of his weekly income is not supported by any provision in the U.S. Constitution. Because the federal government lacks any power to levy a tax of this kind, we see no need to reach the question of the law's status under the 13th Amendment. While President Gramney is free to suggest that the best way out of our nation's economic crisis is for citizens to, quote, pursue a cause greater than our self-interest, close quote, neither he nor Congress has the authority to write that commandment into law. In America, volunteerism is for volunteers. Our founders believed that pursuing one's happiness and acquiring property are the privilege of every citizen. Justice Washington affirmed that principle in 1823, and we reaffirm it today. In handing down today's ruling, we note untenable language in a case issued by this court several years ago. There is no question that the mandate upheld in U.S. Chamber against HHS is a penalty, not a tax. And forcing individuals into commerce they would otherwise avoid violates the Commerce Clause as well as the power to tax and spend. Therefore, any language in U.S. Chamber against HHS suggesting the government may press citizens into service or collect a tax is hereby overruled.